Okay, so down here, of course, at the bottom left is where we have the Quickmask. So we click that, and now I'm in Quickmask mode. But if you double click it, okay, you see here that this is the normal operation of the Quickmask. The opacity or transparency is at 50%, and the color indicates the protected area. So that when you make a selection, of course you know in Photoshop that you have to make a selection to do anything to anything, erase it, change its color, you know, whatever. And so this is the normal operation. So we say okay, and if I do this, okay, this is the normal look for a selection. Then when you go into Quickmask, this is what RubyLith looks like. The semi-transparent plastic film would be represented by this semi-transparent ruby colored stuff in the background. That would be protected or knocked out. And this is the what you might call the active area where something's going to happen if you apply a filter or if I hit delete or whatever. That just got rid of the mask. But anyway, what we're going to do here is reverse this. So we're going to double click this. Well, let me get rid of this selection here first. Select, deselect. Right there. Okay, so I double click this, and what we want to do now is reverse it so that it's going to actually show the selected area. Okay, you're going to see why. Not only that, but we're going to change the opacity to 100%, all the way red, so that it's not transparent. Okay? Now, you sort of always have to be clicking back and forth from regular selection to the Quickmask selection area mode. So when I click this and it's off, that lets me go ahead and make my selection. Now what we're going to be doing is creating a vignette. And what that means is kind of a fuzzy edge around it, or kind of a maybe kind of an arty kind of an edge around the edges of the photo. So you may have to play with this a little bit to decide how far in you want to start your selection, or you know what's important in this picture. Now I can come in pretty far because there's nothing really too important around the edges on this. So I'm just going to go like this, and you know be about the same distance all around, and let go. Now when I click Quickmask, I get this. And so again, it's been reversed to show the area that is going to be affected, and it's been made 100% taking away all the transparency. It's 100% opaque. Now what we're going to do is abuse this selection. And by abuse, I mean this. I'm going to go up here to the filters, and we're going into the blur. You can try some other blurs, but this one here now, it looks like, what is it? How do you pronounce that? People call it Gaussian, 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 you name it. It looks kind of like Russian, huh? If you see the word Russian, you don't call it Russian or something. So I'm going to call it Gaussian, I guess, or Gaussian, I don't know, whatever. It's this guy. And see all of a sudden how this red thing got all blurry? Because this thing was already set. Normally this might be back here, but see how it's now? It's a little more straight on the edges here. Now you can take this little indicator and click anywhere you want in the picture, and that will show up in here. So what I like to do is click right on the edge like that, and now you can see the edge here. And you can see that as I increase the radius, see how it's getting blurrier? So again, you may have to play with this a little bit, trial and error just a tad. You can always undo it and do it again to see, you know, how fuzzy do you want to get. You know, obviously you don't want to do that because it completely fuzzes out. But I had it in the 40s, it seemed like last time when I came into this. So we can try that and see what happens. See how the fuzziness, you can kind of see it right here. So now I'm going to OK. What this indicates is that with the selection tool, with the lasso tool or whatever you want to call it, you can actually select percentages or shades of gray. So the selection can be a fuzzy selection and not be cut and dried all around the edges. And you'll see that in a minute. Here you can see the fuzziness of it, the idea that the selection is going to be kind of fuzzy. But when we switch back by clicking down here on the Quickmask, when we switch back, The marching ants can't show you that. The marching ants just look like it's your evenly cut straight edge. But what's happening really is that there's a certain zone on one side of it of fuzziness and a little bit of zone on the other side too. So when we have this thing looking like this, if I were to hit delete, watch what would happen. Nothing. Let's see, I gotta have it here. Oh, first of all, we have to go to the layers. And I need to go down here. And normally this will start out saying background. And that's kind of a protected layer. And it won't let you do anything to it. So what you have to do pretty much when you first bring in a picture is double click this thing that says background. And then it's just going to want to name it. Wait, it clicked in the wrong place. Right here? No, got to click on the name. Well, because I've changed it, it's wanting me to decide what to do. But normally what will happen is it'll just come up and offer to call it layer 0. And you can change it to whatever you want, but I just go, okay, fine, whatever. That then changes it to a normal layer, which allows transparency and allows you to do all kinds of everything, which normally can't happen when this is a background layer. So now that I have this selected, I'll zip that over, I'll hit delete, and you see what happens. Okay, that's the opposite of what we want to happen. We want the doggy to stay there, and we want the outer part to be affected. So I go ahead and hit undo. That means that we want to actually be selecting everything but the doggy, and that's called inverse. So you go to select and you go inverse. Now right now we see the marching ants here, but not along the edges, right? Because we're selecting the inside. Watch what happens when I go select inverse. See, we have marching ants around the outside now. That means that basically we have a picture frame selected here. And that's what we want. Now again, if I hit delete, that's pretty much the effect we're looking for. That's kind of this vignette look. But that destroys the original picture. And so the holy grail with Photoshop is always to be doing non-destructive editing, to be editing your picture in amazing, wonderful ways, but not ever actually destroying it in case you change your mind. So this obviously is pretty destructive, and this isn't what we want. So what we want to do, again, is to undo that. And so what we're going to do is basically just fill in this picture frame with white and let it be a picture frame on top of the doggy. And the result looks like we had deleted the outside and made this white background. So I'm going to go in here to layers. I've already done this before on these two, and I'll show you those later. But that means right now I'm going to go, and of course whichever one is selected, when you hit new layer, it's going to go right above it. So I'm going to do that. Here's my layer. I'll just call this one blur. Double click it to name it. Okay, get that out of the way. So now with this background selected, I look down here to my foreground and background chips down here. And you can switch those back and forth with this little guy, this little arrow thing right there. So I want to fill it with white. So I can either go into fill and say fill with background color, because the background here is white, or I can do that and say fill with foreground color, so it's really 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But anyways, now we want to go to edit and fill. And here's where it says foreground color. My white is in the foreground. Also, I can just go down here and just say white, regardless of whether this is, whatever colors these are down here. They could be purple and green. I can just go in there and say white. So 3 different ways basically to fill this with white. Now when I say OK, I have this. Another thing that you can do for previewing purposes is if you don't want to lose your selection, but you just want to hide it so you see what it's going to look like, you can go up here into View, and you can go to Show, and then here's the Selection Edges. So I turn that off, but I still do have a selection. And the way I know that is look at my cursor. Right here, my cursor has a plus next to it. But as I move into that area out there, see how it has the scissors? So what happens sometimes is I'll do this and hide this, and all of a sudden I'll wonder why things aren't working and things are grayed out, because my selection is still there. And things, if you have a selection, certain menu functions are available, some aren't. You know, things are a little bit screwy. And I'm like, oh, that's right, I still have a selection. So sometimes that hiding thing can fool you. So let's go back up here again to show. It used to be Command H for hide. It was very easy. But now I don't see a shortcut here next to the show selection. Actually, extras has the Command H, all the extras. So let's go selection edges here. Now, if we go into layers, this is now a layer up above. Let's go ahead and deselect this. Command D for deselect, or select, deselect right there. One of the few shortcuts that make sense. D for deselect, I for inverse. And now you can see, look at this. We just have basically a fuzzy white picture frame. We haven't just done anything to this guy down here at all. But now with this turned on, if this is the look we're looking for a website or for our catalog, whatever, obviously you just go here, File, Save for Web and Devices. Let's 2 up on this and shrink it down some, minus with this thing. Hold down Option, like that. And of course we can save this to whatever we want to do here. Either a ping or a JPEG is what's going to look best with this sort of feathered edge kind of thing going on. So yeah, for a web, anything that's going to go on the web, basically you don't need to go above 30, which is medium. See how this quality here says 30? And what I'll do sometimes is, if at 30 you've got, let's say you've got blue sky and stuff going on up here and it's kind of blotchy a little bit, sometimes I'll sneak this guy up to around 40 and the sky will clear up. And that's all you really need for anything that's going to be seen on the screen, like a website, a PowerPoint, anything that's going to be shown on a monitor. And you can see here the size is not going to increase that much. If we're down here to 30, the size right here says 101K. And up here at 40, it's 126. So that is not that big a difference. But just between 30 and 40, I've noticed that sometimes that can make a big difference. So I'm not actually going to save this right now, but this is how you would then save this out. Obviously, if this were desktop publishing and you put this on a white page with the white background here, it's going to just kind of be floating there with a fuzzy look. Or on a web page with a white, where you have the page web page color is white, then this thing is just going to kind of float there. Okay. Now, because this is, again, non-destructive, if I go in here to my layers and I turn that off, I can again make one of those big red selections, okay? And instead of using blur, I can use a lot of different other filters. Right now they're grayed out because I don't have a selection, but distort is one, and brush strokes is one that I like to use. And so that's what these are. Okay, look at that. This is angled brush strokes. And that's, some of these they used to be really trendy to have these sort of frames. Nowadays it's a little bit, oh really, the frame thing again, it tends to be a little bit overdone. And of course this makes it look like you brushed this guy in, and you just weren't too careful around the edges. Then there's the spatter, which looks like the spray paint version of this. But again, all I did is make a red rectangle. Click along the edge so you can see the effect, and then just go in and play with a bunch of these filters, and you can get all these different effects. But again, the cool thing is I never hurt the doggy at all. All these things are add-ons that you can turn on and turn off and then export or save as, save for web and devices, save these things out and have a different look. So that's a trick that I've been doing for many, many years. I have used that trick on websites in the past, and then like I said, it was kind of like, really? It's kind of overdone. But used with taste, it's kind of a cool thing. And there we go.